Rambo, Last Blood. This is Sylvester Stallone's latest film on the Rambo series, and the critics are all over this one, of course. Who's right, who's wrong? The audience score seems to be way above the critic score, and we're going to talk about that right now on my conservative take. Hi, my name is Kyle, and welcome to my conservative take. If you're unfamiliar with the way I do my movie reviews, I will leave a link right here with a summary of how I come up with my reviews. And as always, I will have a spoiler section toward the end that I will note below. So in case you don't want to know about the movie, you can be warned right there. This movie, Last Blood, is Sylvester Stallone's latest film. It's the fifth installment of the John Rambo franchise, and it's been in production for about 10 years now of the character John Rambo, a former Green Beret Vietnam veteran. And if you hadn't seen any of the movies prior, you really don't need to see them. This is really a standoffish movie that had its own point in time. You can kind of get by with not knowing the history, but it is probably beneficial to at least see the very first one and then the one called Rambo. The second one and the third one, you don't really need to see those really, but it doesn't hurt to see them. And so we have this guy, Rambo, who is coming back to America. This is the first time we've seen him in this country since the very first film, which is called First Blood, came out in the 80s. And Sylvester Stallone's playing this grizzled character who is trying to settle down. He's got a niece, and he's living with her mother, the niece's mother, and he's just trying to live his life. He inherited this farm from, I believe, his father, and he's just chilling. And of course, things go badly, and he has to go and wreak some havoc. So for the story, like I hinted before, there's not much of one. I give this a 6 because I would have given it a 5 or a 4, but I will give it a 6 because there is something in here that has a little bit more under the surface that you just got to see for yourself. I may touch on it in the spoiler section, but it doesn't need to totally spoil that part of it. But I give it a 6 for my personal reason, but I wouldn't argue anyone saying a 5 or a 4 because, like I said before, it is what it is, man. He just goes ballistic when things go bad. The highest ranking I have for this film is going to be the emotional impact because, this film has, on the surface, again, it is what it is, but there is some dialogue that Sylvester Stallone does. He talks a lot in the very beginning. It's got a slow-moving pace in the beginning, so the first act is pretty much exposition and dialogue, setting things up, getting you to like characters so that when stuff goes badly, you can basically get behind Sylvester Stallone when he does what he has to do. And so, but that first act does a decent job of setting things up. And so there is an emotional impact here. So I'm going to give it an 8 for that. And not only that, there's just a lot of shocking stuff. We say emotional isn't just happy and or sad. It's also, oh my gracious, I can't believe he just did that. And this film is brutal. This is a film that you cannot show your kids. Okay, this is a hard R, and the emotional impact, a lot of this just comes from the straight severity of the violence. But again, the first act of the film, they're setting things up so that by the end of the film, you want to get behind him because of the things that happen. And so some of the things in this film are very tough to watch, and it can be very emotional from people. And there's a warning there. I will touch on that in the spoiler section. So the next category is going to be intangibles. I'm going to give it a 6 simply for Sylvester Stallone and his dialogue and his acting and his delivering the emotion that he needs to deliver and not overdoing it. You really get behind him, and I think he does a really good job, and he's not going to get any credit for this at all. He kind of played it the same way he did with the Creed films, and so I think that worked, and I think it works here as well. So for the next category is watchability, and this I had as an 8, but that was way too high. I bumped it down to a 7, simply because that second act is so very, very tough to watch. The first act, again, as I mentioned, does a good job setting characters up. You get to like them. You don't like their decisions, and they pay for those decisions in the second act, and you just want to skip right to the third act. So in fairness, you're not going to watch this whole movie from start to finish more than once probably. You're going to watch that third act, though, over and over and over again because it's just so action-packed and so forth. However, 7 for watchability. Now, as for my impression of watching this film, I just watched it, but I had this rating as a 7, but I bumped it down to a 6. It doesn't affect the overall score. It still comes out what it comes out as. And a 6 may seem, again, harsh, but I'm a pretty tough critic on these things. And this film is pretty much a one-noter. I mean, we've seen this before. We've seen these tropes before. You know, violence and anger and resentment and all of that. We've seen this before, but it's done in a way that is tragic. So I give it a 6 because I just don't feel it has a lot of the polish that a lot of the films needs to be. It's pretty short. Runtime about an hour and a half. There's a lot of flaws in the film that I typically overlook because I look back to films like this in the 80s and 90s where these films were delivered to give a punch, right? And it wasn't designed to be The Maltese Falcon or Casablanca, or Wuthering Heights. No, it was designed to be an action film, and it's in that mode that I treat this film. But at the same time, I have to also give it pushback on the technical things where it doesn't really do what it needs to do in terms of a quality film. So now we come to my conservative take. In this section, it will be a spoiler section, and I will leave a warning below. When I'm done, you will know that I am done dealing with spoilers, and you can safely watch it if you don't want to know anything about the film. Okay, so this film is simply about John Rambo. His niece gets kidnapped into Mexico because she was trying to find her father, who was this bad dude. Bad things happen. She gets sold into a sex trafficking ring, and that part is really hard to watch. She gets tortured. Just use your imagination. It's horrible stuff. Sylvester Stallone goes after her. He gets beat up, and then ultimately he rescues her, but then she dies, and then he just loses it. And in the film, he said earlier on, he said, some people just try to bottle things up. I'm trying to keep a lid on it, because if I don't take a lid on it, I'm going to just, unleash my wrath. And that's what he does in this film. It's like Unforgiven. Clint Eastwood, when he basically is a character who is a gunman in the past, an outlaw, did some bad stuff, and now he's trying to live a good life. But again, they pull him back into his old ways, in the old body, and he's just trying to, deal with those demons, but he can't really let them go. That's what this is. That's what this is. And it's a tragic story. It's horrible. But when he gets going, you are rooting for him, because what these people do to these girls, it's horrific. And so that's why this film is really difficult to watch. It's not for kids. It's a very tough subject matter. But what really irritates me are these people in the media who don't like this film because it touches too close to current narratives and political talking points of today. We're talking about Mexico, cartels, the border, and we're talking about rapists, and we're talking about murderers, okay? And so these are triggering things, but it's the story. It's the story, and if you think that this isn't going on in Mexico, and that's one thing. But if you want to interject positive characters just so you can feel better, we are just being a total hypocrite. And not only that, you're also jeopardizing the movie. This movie comes in about an hour and a half. It's lean, it's mean, and the best thing about it is that it doesn't waste any effort. If you take in time to bring in characters in this film that were not part of the story, then it would have just bogged the thing down and it'd been just too much on the nose. Oh, they're just pandering to the audience because people have to deal with this. Look, there are positive Latinos and Mexicans in this film. There's not a lot, but they are there. And so that is why I feel this film is not what the media wants to make it out to be. You have a white male going to Mexico, kicking some butt, and now, it's just triggering these people. And to me, it's unfair. And I think the film is a lot better than a lot of the films out today. I think Sylvester Stallone does a decent job of delivering his John Rambo character for the last time. And so, so that's the main concern I have. As far as the go and no go on this film, I say it's a go with caution. simply because of the nature of the content in terms of the violence and the second act and the whole just depressing nature of it. So yeah, so in terms of, identity politics, all that stuff, we're good there. There's nothing like that. There's nothing really offensive in terms of that's concerned, and there's no nudity, anything like that. But it's a hard R, it's a hard adult themes, and a lot of things you have to wrap your head around that you really don't want to think about because this stuff really happens. So go with this movie with caution, keep your kids at home, and have a good time watching it. So for my final score, I give Rambo Last Blood 12.75 out of 20, which translates to 3 stars. And I'm going to give this a go with caution for the reasons mentioned in the spoiler section. It's tough to watch, but it is worth your effort to see if you like Rambo films, if you like action films, if you like hard-hitting violence. This film is for you. And so the big question really is this. Did you see Rambo Last Blood? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Do you plan to see it? Are you deterred at all by the reviews that are coming out by the media? You see the Rotten Tomatoes is like at 30%, but yet the audience score is at a whopping 85%. What are your thoughts on this? And so if you enjoy these conservative take reviews, please leave a comment below and like and subscribe and share these videos with your friends. And please check out some videos that we have right here.